The first thing you hear is laughter, the easy kind that drifts across a summer morning and makes you think of lemonade and porches until you notice the boys collecting stones. They do it like a game, pockets bulging, hands weighing the smoothest ones, the way children will invent meaning long before anyone tells them what it is. The square between the post office and the bank is already filling by 10 a.m., a familiar ritual with a timetable everyone knows by heart, because in a village of roughly 300, traditions run as tight as fence rails. Men talk about rain and seed and the fatigue that sits in the back like an ache. Women in faded house dresses trade gossip and call their children with that sing-song reprimand mothers learn by instinct. Teenagers hover in the waterline between heedless and watchful. There's no rush. There's never a rush. The event will be done in time for noon dinner, and the ordinary nature of that promise, home by noon, as if this were a bake sale, doubles the hush that has not yet fallen. Then, Mr. Summers arrives with the black wooden box, a man built for festivals and fundraisers, sturdy, cheerful, a coal merchant whose civic energy seems bottomless. He's followed by Mr. Graves carrying a three-legged stool, and it's put in the center of the square with a small ceremony that looks like nothing at all. The villagers make a circle, but they leave space. As if the object in the middle might be contagious, it's shabby. That box. If anyone bothered to look closely, they'd see a corner splintered down to pale wood, a paint job gone to scuffs and stains, the way heirlooms decay when reverence outlasts care. They've talked about replacing it. Every year, they talk about replacing it. And every year the talk dies of its own weight, because the point is not the thing itself. The point is that it still exists. There used to be more to this chants, salutes, chips of wood instead of folded paper, all the ornate pieces that make a ceremony feel ancient. Now only the bones remain. The list of heads of families, the slips of paper prepared the night before and locked in the coal company safe. The vague remembering that the black box has been kept in different corners of town through the years, like a stubborn cat, a shelf in the grocery, a barn, the post office floor. Mr. Summers jokes about being late. People smile without laughing, the way you do in a waiting room. He speaks to each person by name when they approach, because that's the only flourish that survived the forgetfulness of years. And then, Tessie Hutchinson comes slipping through the back of the crowd with an apron half-tied and the look of someone who remembered a task halfway down the stairs. She says she clean forgot what day it was, and everyone chuckles. Relieved that someone has offered them a harmless reason to exhale, Mr. Summers teases that they nearly started without her. She fires back about leaving dishes in the sink. For a moment, the square is the square again, ordinary, sunlit, a place where the smell of dust feels like summer. But the names must be called. The ritual is part theater, part ledger. There are questions, asked formally even though everyone knows the answers. Who draws for Dunbar this year? With a leg broken, does the Watson boy draw for his mother? The oldness of it can be felt in the way the questions are asked, the way they turn the living into placeholders for absent men. Old man Warner stands in the crowd like a monument to memory. 77 years he's been part of this, and his voice is the crackle of a log on a fire that refuses to go out. Young folks are fools, he mutters, giving up the lottery in other towns, and he quotes an old saying about June and heavy corn, as if that settles everything, as if the weather itself will punish disobedience. He's not wrong in the only way that matters. The village believes him, because the village needs to. The list begins. Adams, Anderson, Bentham, Delacroix. The names move down the alphabet, the cadence of a drum no one admits to hearing. Men come forward, draw a folded paper, hold it tight, careful, unopened, and step back a little from their families without meaning to, as if the few inches between them and their wives and children might blunt the edge of whatever is coming. In the lulls between names, voices stitch the quiet together. Mrs. Delacroix whispers that it seems like there's no time at all between lotteries anymore. Mrs. Graves agrees. Time moving the way weeds do, Quick and everywhere, a boy nearly knocks the box over and writes it with the clumsy grace of adolescence. Someone says they should hurry. No one hurries. You can feel the square holding its breath by degrees, like a shared lung. There are small kindnesses, a hand that steadies an elbow, a joke that aims for harmless. No one talks about the pile of stones in the corner that the boys have been guarding like treasure. No one mentions the fact that this ritual could be abandoned the same way it once shed its chant and salute. The more any community forgets the words of a ceremony, the more fiercely it grips what remains, because the scraps feel like proof that the center still holds. When Mr. Summers pauses, the villagers sway almost imperceptibly, a flock guided by the tilt of a single head. The black box sits in the middle like a heart, ordinary and inexorable. The sun is bright and the air is easy, and the square is exactly the sort of place where a fair might lift music into the day. Names tick forward, fingers tighten around paper, and somewhere near the end of the alphabet, when the list feels nearly spent and everyone is sure they can predict the next breath. Mr. Summers lifts his slip and says, "All right, fellows," and the opening begins. But who will look down and see the mark that ends one life and lets the others go home by noon? Could the truth be even darker than anyone will say aloud under this cheerful sky? Bill Hutchinson holds the slip of paper too long, his face blank, his silence louder than any shout could be. Then Tessie's voice slices through the square, shrill, desperate, echoing off the stone walls. It isn't fair. Everyone heard the way she said it, half protest, half plea, but the words fall flat against the weight of tradition. Mrs. Delacroix calls back with a brittle laugh, reminding Tessie that all of them had the same chance. Even Bill mutters at her to stop, his tone not unkind, but heavy with the knowledge that arguing will not change the outcome. Mr. Summers consults his list again, his voice steady as he explains the next step, though he does not need to. Everyone knows what comes next, knows the order of drawing, knows that when a family is chosen, each of its members must step forward again. It is routine. The rules are not in dispute. The formality itself gives the horror its structure. As if by repeating the words each year, they transform chaos into order. Tessie shouts again, demanding that her married daughter and son-in-law should be forced into the drawing too. But Mr. Summers shakes his head. The rules are clear. Families draw together, daughters belong to their husbands' households. Everyone knows this. The crowd murmurs, restless, their eyes darting toward the black box as if it might answer for itself. The Hutchinson children stand still, waiting, their faces pale in the sun. Bill Hutchinson's voice is low, resigned, as he confirms his household himself, his wife, Tessie, their son, Bill Jr., their daughter, Nancy, and their youngest, little Dave. The crowd shifts. Everyone knows these names now, knows this family will provide the marked paper. The black box is stirred again, and Mr. Graves returns the slips for the Hutchinsons, 5 pieces of paper folded tight, the others scattered to the ground, scraps of safety flying loose in the summer breeze. Tessie tries again, her voice cracking this time, begging them to start over. No one listens. The ritual is moving forward, and like a wheel on a hill, it cannot be stopped once it begins to roll. The family steps forward in turn. Little Dave goes first, his tiny hand guided to the box, the paper taken from his fist by Mr. Graves so it will not be lost. The crowd watches, some with pity, some with indifference. Next is Nancy, 12 years old, moving with the trembling grace of a child, pretending not to be afraid. Bill Jr. follows, clumsy and red-faced, nearly knocking the box over in his nervousness. Tessie hesitates, glaring around the circle as if her defiance could shame the others. But at last, she snatches her paper. Finally, Bill himself draws, his shoulders sagging as if the simple act of reaching into the box costs him more than labor in the fields ever did. The pause that follows is unbearable. The air itself feels thick, pressing down on every chest. Old man Warner mutters that people aren't what they used to be, but his voice quivers just enough to betray that even he is holding his breath. The first slips are opened. A sigh rolls through the crowd when little Dave's is shown to be blank. Nancy opens hers with relief, showing the crowd, her friends cheering softly as if she'd passed an exam. Bill Jr. follows, his slip also blank, and the crowd lets out a murmur. Bill Hutchinson himself holds up a blank paper, his relief drowned out by the silence that falls next. Only Tessie is left. The moment stretches, all eyes fixed on her. She clutches the slip, refusing to open it. Mr. Summers prompts gently, his voice hushed. Bill takes her wrist, pries the paper from her grasp, and holds it aloft. The black spot is there, bold and undeniable, for a heartbeat. No one moves. Then Mr. Summers says the words. Almost softly, it's Tessie. The crowd exhales as one, the tension collapsing into action. Mrs. Delacroix bends to pick up a stone so heavy she must use both hands. Mrs. Dunbar clutches smaller stones, apologizing that she cannot run fast. The children, eager to be part of what they barely understand, already have their weapons ready. Even little Dave is handed pebbles by someone in the crowd, his wide eyes not comprehending what role he has just been given. Tessie stands alone in the clearing, arms raised in a futile gesture of defense, her voice ragged with terror. It isn't fair. It isn't right. The first stone strikes her temple, sharp and sudden. She stumbles, crying out again, but the voices of the villagers rise in unison. Old Man Warner urging them on, Steve Adams pressing forward, Mrs. Graves at his side. The circle closes in, hands raised, stones flying. Tessie's protests are drowned by the rhythm of stone on flesh, by the blind obedience of tradition carried out one more time. By noon, the square will be empty again. The scraps of paper will be trampled into the dirt, the stones scattered back to the corners of the village. Families will return to their homes for dinner, conversations already shifting back to planting, rain, and the ordinary business of life. And the black box will be put away until next June, waiting patiently to remind them all that nothing changes here, not really, when the dust settles. The echo of Tessie's screams seems to hang in the air long after the final stone has been thrown. The crowd disperses with a strange blend of relief and routine, like workers leaving a factory after the shift whistle blows. The ritual is complete. The danger has passed for another year. And for most, that is all that matters. But beneath the ordinary chatter of people drifting back to their chores, a silence curls at the edges, a silence that asks questions no one dares voice aloud. Why do they keep doing this? What possible reason can justify turning neighbors, friends, even children, into executioners? The answers are as brittle as the traditions themselves. Old Man Warner's mutterings are still in the ears of many lottery in June. Corn be heavy soon. The words sound like wisdom, like a charm against famine, though no one can say if the crops truly depend on it. Perhaps once, long ago, the lottery was tied to sacrifice and survival. But now, the reasoning has thinned to shadows. The ritual continues because it always has. To abandon it would feel like cutting the cord that holds the village together. And so the cruelty is woven into the fabric of normal life, disguised by familiarity. The black box itself is proof of this contradiction. Once sacred, then neglected. Now preserved only because people fear changing it. It is a relic without meaning. Yet it anchors the ceremony. People complain about its shabby condition, but none will dare replace it. They whisper about tradition as if it were a living thing that punishes those who defy it. In reality, it is their own collective obedience that enforces the law. The box is just wood and nails. The power comes from belief, and belief is harder to fight than stone. Even those who grumble privately cannot break away. The Adams family had spoken of other towns abandoning their lotteries, and Mrs. Adams mentioned it quietly in the crowd, but her voice was drowned out by Warner's angry dismissal. His 77 years of participation gave him authority, and his scorn silenced any thought of rebellion. Fear of being labeled foolish or disloyal is enough to keep the rest compliant. It is easier to nod and let the ritual continue than to face the weight of being different. After all, who would stand with you if you refused in a place where the punishment for disobedience could be death? Silence feels safer. The children learn it before they even understand. They are the first to gather stones, laughing and chasing each other. Unaware of what those stones will soon mean, they mimic their parents' behavior. Because that is what children do. One day, they will throw with the same resignation, with the same quiet relief that it is not their family chosen. The lottery teaches them early that survival sometimes requires complicity, and complicity becomes habit. By the time they are old enough to question, the answers are already embedded in their bones. It is tradition. It must be done. Tessie's protest, her cries of "it isn't fair, it isn't right" will echo for a while. Some may hear her words in their dreams, may see her desperate eyes when they close their own. But memory fades, dulled by chores, by weather, by the steady rhythm of ordinary life. By next year, those echoes will be softened into the background hum of inevitability. They will remember her death only as another name in the long line of names. Another year completed. Her family, shattered, will blend back into the rhythm of the village. Because what else can they do? To speak out is to risk the same fate. And so the village endures, bound by invisible chains stronger than any rope. Each June 27th, the ritual repeats. Each year, the crowd gathers under the same sun, in the same square, with the same nervous laughter that always fades into silence. The black box waits, its splinters deepening, its paint fading, its authority intact. No one asks why loudly enough to be heard. No one dares to step out of the circle. Because what happens to those who do, the answer lies in Tessie's final cry, swallowed by stones. But what if, one year, someone did refuse? What if the crowd found their hands still, their stones untouched on the ground? Could the ritual survive without them? Or would it collapse like the empty box it has become? Or is the truth darker, that the ritual is not in the box at all, but in the hearts of those who keep it alive? And if that is so, then perhaps the lottery never really ends. Not here, not anywhere. It simply waits for the next moment when tradition feels heavier than conscience. The square is empty now, but if you walk across it in the fading light of evening, you can still sense the weight of what happened there. The dirt is scuffed with footprints. The air carries the faint smell of dust and sweat, and the stones lie scattered like forgotten tools after a long day's work. There is no blood, no visible evidence of what the crowd did, but the silence is thicker than ever. It is the silence of a community that has agreed, without words, to hide its own cruelty beneath the veil of normalcy. In the Hutchinson home, the air is different. Bill sits at the table with his children, his face ashen, his voice hollow. Nancy and Bill Jr. stare at their untouched food, their hands twitching at small movements. Little Dave is confused, too young to understand why his mother will not come back through the door. He clutches a pebble he forgot to drop, rolling it in his tiny palm like a toy. The children do not cry loudly. They have already learned to be quiet, to keep grief hidden. Bill himself does not weep. His silence is heavier than tears. The silence of a man who knows he participated, who knows that by not resisting, he helped deliver his wife to death. The neighbors do not visit, though a few will stop Bill on the road in the coming days to offer stiff nods or empty words. No one will speak of Tessie directly. They will talk about the weather, the crops, the work that needs doing. Life continues because it must. In small places like this, grief is expected to be private, folded neatly away like laundry, never spilling into the public square. The lottery depends on that, depends on everyone agreeing to treat death as another chore to be finished before dinner. The black box is returned to its temporary resting place, shoved onto a shelf in the grocery or tucked under a counter, its presence both ordinary and sinister. For the rest of the year, it gathers dust, a harmless-looking object that no one avoids, yet no one forgets. Every glance at it is a reminder, every brush of the hand against its splintered wood a quiet warning. It has no power except the power given to it by belief, and yet that power is absolute. Conversations about abandoning the lottery surface again in whispers. The Addams family repeats what they've heard about other towns giving it up. A few others nod thoughtfully. But then Warner's voice cuts through, gruff and commanding, dismissing the idea as foolishness. He is old, but his authority is iron. To disagree openly would be to challenge the weight of 77 years of obedience. No one dares. And so, the whispers die away, leaving only the steady beat of tradition. The children, restless and curious, ask questions in the weeks after. Why did Mother have to go? Why couldn't we stop it? Bill has no answers, only the platitudes of survival. He tells them it is how things are done, that it keeps the community strong, that they must not complain. The words taste bitter in his mouth, but he repeats them, because silence feels more dangerous. The children accept his explanations for now, but seeds of unease take root in their hearts. One day, those seeds might grow into rebellion or they might wither, strangled by fear before they bloom. The village itself does not change. The seasons turn, fields ripen, babies are born, and funerals are held. The lottery becomes a memory, blurred like the edges of a dream. Until the next June comes and the cycle begins again. On that morning, the villagers will gather once more in the square, the children first, their pockets full of stones. They will laugh and shout and play as if it is all a game, until the black box appears and silence falls. The men will step forward, the women will call their children, the names will be read, and someone will cry out that it isn't fair. But what is fairness in a place where chance decides life and death? What is justice in a community that worships tradition above compassion? Each year, the villagers reassure themselves that the ritual is necessary, that it keeps the order of things intact. They do not stop to question whether that order is worth preserving, because to question would be to see the truth that the lottery is not about crops or fortune or safety. It is about control. It is about teaching obedience so deeply that even murder feels like duty. And yet, if you listen closely in the square on the quiet nights after the lottery, you might hear Tessie's voice still lingering, carried by the wind that rustles the grass. It isn't fair. It isn't right. Words that the village will not say aloud, but words that refuse to die. Perhaps one day they will be remembered not as protest, but as prophecy. Perhaps one day someone will hear them and refuse to pick up a stone. Tradition is a heavy thing, heavier than the stones themselves. It presses down on the villagers in ways they barely notice, shaping their choices, steering their hands. To outsiders, the lottery would be unthinkable, a barbaric ritual long past its time. But for those who live here, it has become the rhythm of their lives, a dark heartbeat they cannot silence. When June comes, they prepare without even realizing it, like animals moving with the seasons. They know the date, they know the rules, and deep down, they know the fear. In the weeks that follow Tessie Hutchinson's death, conversations in the village bend around the subject without ever naming it. Mrs. Delacroix praises her garden. Mr. Graves discusses repairs at the post office. Children laugh in the dusty streets. But every now and then, a pause slips into the chatter, a shadow crossing someone's face when their thoughts stumble back to the lottery. They do not dwell on it. They cannot. To dwell on it would mean admitting what they have done. And so, the silence grows, thick and unbroken, like a pact sealed by fear. Bill Hutchinson carries his grief like an invisible wound. He goes through the motions of work, tending the fields, fixing what needs fixing, speaking when spoken to. But at night, when the house is quiet and the children sleep, he stares at the empty chair across from him, the one Tessie once filled with her laughter and her temper and her life. He remembers her voice crying that it wasn't fair, and the memory gnaws at him. Yet even he says nothing. The weight of tradition holds his tongue, just as it held his hand when he did not stop the crowd. He knows the truth to speak against the lottery is to stand alone, and to stand alone is to invite death. Old man Warner, meanwhile, walks the streets with a kind of pride. To him, Tessie's fate is proof that the village remains strong, that the old ways still hold. He scorns the younger ones who whisper about other towns giving up the practice. To him, they are weak, foolish, blind to the dangers of change. His certainty comforts the fearful, silencing doubts before they can grow. And so, his words become the village's armor, a shield against the guilt they refuse to feel. But the children remember. Nancy Hutchinson lies awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment when her mother's paper revealed the black spot. She hears again the laughter, the shouts, the stones striking flesh. She remembers the way her father's hand tightened on Tessie's wrist as he forced the paper open. She knows that one day, it could be her standing in that circle, her name called, her family chosen, and though she is only 12, she already understands what that means. There is no safety, no justice, only the blind turning of chance. She clutches her blanket and wonders if she will ever feel safe again. As summer fades into autumn, the village settles back into its ordinary life. Harvest comes, and with it, the reassurance that the corn is heavy, just as Warner promised. Some will tell themselves that Tessie's death made this possible, that the ritual has once again done its work. Others will not think about it at all. They will eat, drink, and laugh, carrying on as though the lottery were just another task, like mending fences or baking bread. And, in a way, it is. It is a chore of survival, passed down through generations, stripped of meaning but kept alive by habit. The true horror of the lottery is not in its violence, but in its acceptance. It is the way ordinary people, good neighbors and loving parents, become executioners when tradition demands it. It is the way laughter turns to silence, the way hands that cradle children also hurl stones. And it is the way no one stops to ask why. They do not need to. The answer is already written in the heart of the village because this is what we do. Shirley Jackson's story lingers because it reflects something deeper than a single village, deeper than a single ritual. It forces us to look at the ways we cling to tradition, even when it no longer serves us, even when it destroys us. It asks whether obedience is safety or surrender, whether silence is peace or complicity. And it whispers a question that cannot be ignored if we lived in that village, standing in that square. Would we be brave enough to refuse, or would we pick up a stone? Grateful that it was not our name drawn this time. The lottery ends each year with death, but its true power lies in the living and the way they choose to keep it alive. And unless someone, someday, breaks the silence, the stones will always wait, the black box will always return, and the words, "It isn't fair," will always be drowned beneath the weight of tradition. If this story intrigued you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think you would have the courage to break the silence, or would you follow the crowd?